Hello, everyone. It is Saturday night at 10 o'clock, and this is Starfleet Tactical. I'm Chris Weave. I am here, as I frequently am, with Pat Doyle, who is here this week. I'm here this week. It's a nice change of pace. Nobody's in the hospital. Nobody's doing anything like that. It's good to be back. Hey, Lissa, why don't you just come on? Because we haven't seen you in a while either. So
yeah,
because the last time we did the show, I'm trying to remember what I was talking about, but I was on solo if I remember correctly. And then the next week we were going to do this show, and Pat was going to be unavailable, and I just wasn't feeling very well because I remember what the last show was. We talked about Strange New Worlds.
Yes.
And I think Pat was there for that, right? Weren't you?
I believe I was around for some sort of discussion of Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, this was like the 17th or the 16th of July. That's how long it's been since we've done a show. And so we did that show, and then I was at my brother's house, and then I spent the next day with my brother at the Wee family reunion, and then 2 days later on Tuesday, my brother comes and says, yeah, he's got COVID. He tested positive for COVID.
Fun.
And so I never got it, but I definitely had a cold or something. So I felt like shit and was going to do the show solo the next week and ended up canceling it because I just didn't have a show in me. And that was like the 23rd, I think. And then on the 25th, things went to hell. And I'll tell that story momentarily. But in the meantime, what have you guys been up
to? Life. I started a couple new tabletop streams up that were added to the repertoire. Started dating someone. That's why I wasn't here last week. A lot of things going on in the tabletop sphere because Gen Con happened in between then and now.
Mm-hmm.
Which was, I had a blast. I had a wonderful time meeting my friends. And I also maybe pulled a Fey trick on one of the dinner and a game show people to get them off of the roof while they were drunk.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's good to not be on the roof when you're drunk.
Generally speaking.
And it's also really, really hard to know that when you're drunk.
Also a fair point. Counterpoint. A good amount of people, while they're drunk, still retain the knowledge that gravity's bad.
Gravity's bad frequently. So, Pat, as an airline pilot, do you have any thoughts about gravity being bad?
Well, I'm actually kind of a fan because otherwise I'd be gone.
There is something to be said about limited applications of gravity.
It's true. It's very true. It's it's a catch-22.
It's like everything.
It's good. It's bad.
There's a Goldilocks zone for everything, right?
There's a positive and a negative.
So. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I had been working through a steady stream of tactical stuff and sort of relating it to science fiction. To be honest, I kind of lost the thread on that. I need to go back and sort of reacquire where I was and all that. I can tell you that one thing I've been meaning to say for a while is Chris Carlson, who's been on the show before, you may recall I said something about the Forrestal class aircraft carrier using the hull that was designed for the Montana. And Chris went, I don't know about that. And he went and pulled the thread on it, which included looking at a lot of drawings of both and came back and said, not true. And so it'll be a little bit interesting. I'm sure that this was a story that somewhere in the retelling, I probably misremembered it, or the kid misremembered it. The kid who at the time was an adult, right? Because this was something that had happened back in like the 50s. But he misremembered it or something like that. And TJ saying, "Didn't I say that?" And I think you did say that. so good for TJ for catching this. I'm very big on the idea that if I get something wrong, I'd like to come back and say that I got it wrong. So that was one thing that was indeed wrong. Wright says the Midway class is similar to the Iowa class. I don't know how similar. Have to go back and take a look at that. But my guess is Chris probably would have said that because he's looked at all that stuff. He was going through Norman Friedman's illustrated design history book for both the carriers and the battleships. And those books, if you haven't seen them and you're into that sort of thing, they're just fantastic. While I was in the hospital, we'll get to the hospital in just a second. While I was in the hospital, I listened to Norman Friedman's Fighting the Great War at Sea. And that was a fantastic book in and of itself. And I got a much, much better appreciation for exactly how much they were clamoring during World War I, how much Jellicoe was clamoring for destroyers in particular. Destroyers and small craft is what he was looking for, and how they used what Corbett would call the flotilla, all the small craft, and they used the battle fleet in conjunction with each other. So, the flotilla that doesn't have a whole lot of range. It doesn't have a whole lot of endurance, but there was like one instance where the Canadian Army was coming across on transports. And so they sent the Grand Fleet to sea to sort of meet the Canadian Army to the west of Great Britain. And then they flooded all their small stuff out into the North Sea, all their torpedo boats and stuff out into the North Sea, in case the Germans came out. Not so much necessarily because they thought that these small craft would be able to stop them themselves, but because it would give them warning and time to deploy the Grand Fleet, to send the Grand Fleet back to do an intercept. The other thing he talked about there was this nifty piece of technology that Jellicoe had that Admiral Scheer, the head of the High Seas Fleet, didn't have. You want to take a guess as to what that was, Pat?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Jellicoe had this nifty piece of technology that at Jutland that Admiral Scheer didn't have.
I do not know. It's been a while since I read about Jutland.
It was called a plot. So
you mean a map and a pencil?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
All right.
So they're tracking the location of all the ships by writing shit down on a chart, a naval chart, whereas Scheer's trying to keep track of it all in his head.
Really? That was an innovation, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Fascinating.
They were literally playing Battleship on a battleship.
Yeah, they were. And the thing is, the fleet's so large that literally there's no place in the fleet that you can see the entire fleet, right? So there's stuff that's going on over the horizon and you can't see it. Well, and it's not just the horizon, it's that the North Sea is famous for being hazy and misty, and even if there's not outright fog. And so it was, they were spread out, and they're doing everything via radio. And I remember there's all sorts of instances where they're reporting back to Jellicoe, and they're giving they're saying, I can see enemy ships and they're this direction. And it's like, yeah, but where are you? Where are you? And so in my first time at sea on an aircraft carrier, we were getting reports about where the submarine was from places were out there, and they're not reporting their position either. And I remember thinking, we've had like 100 years to get this right. almost 100
Well,
years.
any individual's only got a couple years to get it right.
Yep. 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 That was good. That was good. So yeah. So should I tell the story about where I was?
Tell the story.
So some of you who have seen this on Facebook, thank you very much for the good wishes from everybody. Those who have seen it on Facebook saw the short version of it. On the morning of July 5th, or July 25th, I'm sorry, July 25th, about 9 o'clock in the morning, I felt like I was going to have diarrhea. So I go to the bathroom, I do my business, and hey, that kind of looks purple. Kind of looked like the pomegranate juice I've been drinking since I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. And for a while there, I thought it might be pomegranate juice, but it wasn't pomegranate juice. Happens a couple of more times in very quick succession. And it's like, yeah, that's blood. That's definitely blood. So I get in my car, I pack a bag to go to the ER, and because I've learned the hard way that if you go to the ER, you should assume that you're going to be there. You're going to be there overnight. And so I go to the ER, and while I'm in the waiting room of the ER, I go to the men's room 3 more times. I end up having at least, there were 10 times where I'm clearly bleeding. They later said, one of the ICU nurses said that they thought that they had, that I had probably lost about half the blood in my body.
Jesus, that's not good.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. He's also the one who said, you look a lot better than your chart does. Because at one point, they do a test of my hemoglobin's at 14.3, which is low, but it's in the normal range. And then they do another test and I'm at 3.7. Now, I wasn't really at 3.7. That's what happens when you're drawing blood from the same arm you're pumping fluids into. But it did cause everybody to sort of panic.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say panic. They're medical professionals. Let's just say they were really focused and trying not to say "oh shit" in front of the patient. When I said that to my general practitioner last week, he just laughed and said, "I would have said oh shit." So I get a bunch of blood. At one point I've got literally a bag of blood going into each arm. They figure out where the bleeder is. They transfer me to another hospital, lights and sirens transfer, because I wasn't stable. They do a lights and sirens transfer. They go to do a procedure, but by that point, they've given me something to counteract the blood thinner I'm on and thicken my blood up a little bit, and I've stopped bleeding. And so I stopped bleeding just on that. And then I ended up spending basically the rest of the week in the hospital. I got released on Thursday and had a negative reaction and ended up going back to the ER because my heart was at 138 beats per minute, which is what happens when you don't have enough red blood cells and your heart's trying to make the red blood cells that are there do double duty. So that was, So basically I spent a week doing that. My brother Sean came out. Delon, who of course, tried to give me COVID, Delon couldn't come out because my brother Sean is working on his undergraduate degree. And he's getting it sort of late in life, and he basically had the time free. Delon, even if he wasn't working, wasn't going to travel because he had COVID. And so Sean came out and spent two weeks with me and took me to a bunch of iron infusions. So I've had 6 iron infusions, which means I'm back to just being chronically anemic, which is where I was when I started. I'm no longer acutely anemic. I'm just chronically anemic. So I actually
start.
It is a start. It is a start. It is a start. And, I'm a gastric bypass patient, and iron deficiencies are sort of like Mark 1 Mod 0 at about the 3 to 5 year mark. Yeah. And I got my surgery in June of 2018. So I'm right on schedule. I'm right on schedule for having an iron deficiency. And so my guess is I'm probably going to have to get iron infusions my guess is I'm going to end up doing it like once or twice a year for the rest of my life. Hey, that's great. The surgery saved my life. I really think the surgery saved my life. If they had told me that you're going to have to do this every week, I would have said, yep, let's do that. But thankfully not. So in any event, there was a lot of drama on Monday the 25th, a little bit of drama on Thursday, especially when one of the tests came back and I didn't know how to interpret it. And then later they said, yeah, that wasn't a heart attack. That was just your heart's under stress because your heart rate was at 138 beats a minute. So your heart's under stress. No biggie. So by and large, I'm doing good. But I haven't really exercised in a month and I'm sort of under the weather, etc. But I thought it was important to get back here and tell you all what's going on. Thank you very much for everybody who said anything about it. I do appreciate all the support I was getting from people. Let's see. Let me look through the comments really quick because somebody I think had a question.
From Robert Westfall.
Yeah.
At 9:05 p.m. if you're looking for a time stamp there.
Well, no, I think it's at 10:05.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want to be all East Coast about it.
Yeah, because it's
Yes,
set on the studio's time, which is East Coast.
I am on that noted East Coast state known as Ohio.
This one?
That
yeah.
one.
Yeah. In fact, I was reading something not too long ago, and I'm trying to remember whether it was a Star Trek thing or not that specifically talked about somebody having something like that.
Starfleet battles the Andromedans. They had power absorber panels.
Yeah, this was something else though, and I can't remember what it was though. Somewhere in my notebook, I've got a list of notes of what shields mean, right? Across a lot of different science fiction properties, because everybody does it differently. If you read Sternbach and Okuda, it's very clearly a gravitational thing in Sternbach and Okuda. It's a gravitational gradient of some sort, but you've got everything from it's a force field and things bounce off of it to in the Lensman universe, it actually it's a wall of force that you can overload in the Jerry Purnell's Mote in God's Eye universe, the Co-Dominion universe. They absorb energy. And they will absorb it until they reach a point where they can't absorb anymore, at which point they basically discharge all their energy to the inside of the sphere, which means if you're on the inside of the sphere and you don't have a shield up because it's your shield that's trying to kill you, it's bad for you. And so that's why they always, at some point, they'll drop their shield. Or the people shooting them will sort of slacken off and let them stick an antenna out so that they can say, okay, we're going to surrender. But what we see specifically in Star Trek, if you look at Sternbach and Okuda, it works differently than that. It's a gravitational thing. So Pat, you've been working on the game, and your game came out. You're on mute.
Okay. Yeah. Been working on a game, or actually published a game. So it is, let's see if we can hold that up right there. There we go. It's called Star Force Commander. And Starship Combat game. And it's on the War Game Vault. It's basically a print and play game. It's about $20. Obviously it comes with the rules. And then for the moment, it is a, you'd have to print out all the counters and damage cards and stuff like that and put the stuff together yourself. However, I do have, in September, the printers are finally sending me the basic game components, so we can sell those separately for people who would rather just spend some money rather than spend the time. So since just about everything comes down to that, you can go either way with it. So if you like the arts and crafts thing, you can make your own cards and counters and stuff like that. Or if you just want to get right to it, you'll be able to buy the the actual game components, damage cards,
Mhm.
and all that stuff. But yeah,
Now,
it's
are
on
there
War Game.
dice rolls or anything
Yes,
like
there
that? Or
There are dice rolls. Yes.
What dice?
Wow, I managed to grab 16 dice right here. Let's see, the lighting's not too good, but anyways, so yeah, it is a dice-based game, and it's a Starship combat game. So if anybody who has, it's probably a little more streamlined. Well, it's definitely more streamlined than Starfleet Battles. It's a bit more streamlined than Federation Commander, which is a fairly streamlined system as it is. Anyways, so yeah, but and we expect to come out with additional items and expansions for the game as time goes on, and as I'm able, as I'm able to work on it and publish stuff.
And as it is right now, I think it would be fairly safe to say that if you are familiar with Star Trek, it will seem comfy to you. It will seem familiar to you.
That's probably
post
fair.
the link.
What's sure?
The link.
Yes. I will send that to you. Of
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
It's been in the top 10 of Wargame Vault since it released. Spent about a week and a half or so at number 1, and then it's been floating back and forth depending on whatever other new releases have been out there. So let's find. We will.
So it's a D6 based system, is what I was seeing, I think.
It is it is 6-sided dice. Let's see here. Hell, I could share my screen if you like. But yeah, it's 6-sided dice, and what it is, there are four separate 6-sided dice. Let's see. Wow, that light is awfully bright. Okay.
Are they specialized D6 is what I'm saying?
Yes. So if you see, and basically what we have here are, they're indented dice, and we have stickers. So if you order a set, you'll get dice with stickers on them. And that's basically because customized dice are ridiculously expensive unless you're buying 5,000 of them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they end up being $2 a piece. And one of the things, in order to make the game fairly quick, about 16 dice is the right number. You can certainly get more dice if you want. But so when you get hit, you have it's either a miss, a light hit, a medium hit, or a heavy hit. So, and then there are blue dice. Blue dice are the lightest, least amount of damage. Then there's green dice, yellow dice, which have a few extra heavy and medium hits. And then there are red dice. These would be your antimatter torpedoes, let's say. And they also have an additional hit on them. Yes, that's it. They have an additional hit on them.
In chat. That
is a special hit, and that is just whatever unique damage that particular weapon does.
So just out of curiosity, because I just realized that this is like the most critical question that I can ask about this game, which is, when you're talking about this game, are you speaking for your employer?
Oh, no, that's right. Thank you. We have, we really are out of practice.
Yeah, we really are out of practice on this. I think, I mean, usually I'm tripping over myself. I've thought about legally changing my name to Chris, I don't speak for my employer Weave, because it'll just make it easier.
I don't speak for any of my many employers, actually.
So okay.
Not even one of them.
I don't either. I don't speak for my employer either. So don't anybody think that we do that. So So I know that. So there's some of the stuff that Pat's been working on this project for how long? 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I haven't played it in a while because, COVID. When was the last time you and I were in the same location? You were in the Dayton area and you were at that hotel and I came and
In
visited
Cleveland.
you.
Cleveland a couple months ago.
Cleveland?
Yeah. Andy. Went to visit Andy and Joelle.
No, but I wasn't there.
Yeah, you were.
Oh, you're right. So Pat and I went to a funeral.
This sounds like the opening for a dark joke, Chris. Like
no.
Right
Pat,
off the bat. So Pat and I walk into a funeral.
And Andy Presby's father passed away, and we went to the funeral. And I totally forgot about that because there was socializing, but it wasn't really a social occasion other than the fact that we got to hang out with Andy. Yeah. But I mean, the last time you and I got a chance to do anything that looked like playing a game was
Actually, I think I had flown into Dayton. You drove over. Yeah, I had an overnight in Dayton. So
but
you drove over to the hotel.
But I mean, I think, and we played a couple of games, but not this. The last time we played this, I think, was down in Cincinnati. Yumi and Arias played.
That was Richmond. That was the very first time. The other time was at Arias's apartment. Pre-COVID with Brian and anyways, so we played at Arias's place.
Okay, so that's been a while ago.
So
Steven asked a good question, but it's your game. Aren't you your own employer?
I actually
he does.
That actually occurred to me while I was on that. I don't speak for any of my employers. I guess that's not true because I am technically self-employed on that particular front. So yes, I stand corrected.
You do speak for Mariner Games.
I speak for me.
Yeah, but Pat and I have been talking about this game, even though I haven't actually seen the current version in forever. We've been talking about it, and I know that the plan is to make a game that was flexible enough that you could add, that you could reskin it in to cover other things, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So going back to what Robert Westphal was saying about, absorbing the energy and pumping them off to the shields, et cetera. That's exactly the sort of thing that you could have. If you wanted to have not Andromedans in the game, your not Andromedans can do something like that if you want.
I figure probably the damage would perhaps get absorbed by batteries or something like that. And then those batteries could then be used to power other ship systems and stuff. I'd have to obviously sit down and think about the exact mechanics within the game. But yeah, it would probably, it would turn into the damage would up to a point would turn into power that you can use for the ship. And then probably at some point you'd overstress it and it would start causing damage.
Yeah. The problem with anything like this is, one of the main issues in game design for things like this is that you don't want to create something where it's like, now it's the 800-pound gorilla and it just goes around hammering people, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, you want to balance it so that it's, if you sit down to play a game where you always know you're going to lose. Some people would at least have some objections to that.
There's one of the nightmares of doing games. Now, I'm a professional game designer also, but I'm a professional game designer for in the past, I worked for the United States Navy designing games. So I wasn't doing games that you could buy. I was doing things like the Global War game. I was the lead analyst for Global 2008 and one of the designers for that, and the Strategic Foundations game, et cetera, that were up at the Naval War College. So we didn't have the problem that you can run into, which is, especially if you're dealing like a big company. So you publish your game and it's going to get played more potentially in the first couple of weeks after it came out than however long it got played during the development process.
Right. Right.
And
Yep.
you end up with an entirely different group of people who don't know how it's supposed to play. And the number of instances where, you know, it's happened that games have come out and then people, it's like, you know, this game's totally broken. And they never saw it. They just never saw it. And totally broken. Let me qualify totally broken in that regard. It doesn't necessarily mean the game doesn't work. It means that there's obvious solutions. There's things that you obviously wouldn't do. Battletech is a great example of this. If you go back to the original Battletech, the mechs that you got in the original box set were the Phoenix Hawk and the Shadow Hawk and the Mosquito, I believe. And if you look at it, like, nobody in their right mind would play with a Phoenix Hawk or a Shadow Hawk. They just, I never ran into anybody who ever played with those. They're in the box set, and they're supposedly these mechs that everybody has, but everybody sort of goes, yeah, no, I'm not going to play with those because they're just not that good.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're trying to create balance in a game, because like I've been actually like writing lore for a home D&D game that I'm going to be running in the near future, and like trying to balance everything. Sometimes they, like, no matter what, there's going to be that one blind sight that you didn't see coming, and that's what the play testing, the beta testing is for.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
You see this in tactical space combat games all the time because the designer approaches it and they've got an idea of what they want. And so they create a lot of the background and they create rules for the things that they want in there. And the does that make sense part doesn't necessarily happen. You kind of saw that with Traveler, and then Mega Traveler comes out and they're trying to come up with excuses as to why you have fighters and why you have big fighter carriers and stuff like that. I think that some of the later products, and we're going to get into this at some point, because those of you who've been fans of the show for a while know that Pat and I had a discussion about fighters, and we didn't really come to a satisfactory conclusion about it. And we sort of decided that we decided, in that I said we're going to do it and Pat didn't say no. At some point, we're going to have another discussion about that because I've done a lot more thinking about it. And I think part of the thing we need to do is basically go down and figure out why fighters work. And do we really mean fighters? I would argue that we don't generally. If you go back to World War II, it wasn't fighters on aircraft carriers that did the damage. It was attack aircraft. It was torpedo bombers and dive bombers. It's not like you had F-4F Wildcats machine gunning the enemy aircraft carriers and whittling them down, right? The purpose of the Wildcats was to make sure that their dive bombers didn't kill our ships and our dive bombers did kill their ships, and so that they couldn't shoot down their dive bombers. And so it's not really about fighters. And that's why you sort of go back and look at the original Battlestar Galactica, and it's just like, they're just going to pew them.
No, they had torpedoes.
Well,
so I mean, you didn't really see it in the show. It shows up actually on their little tactical scanner screens if you look at it and watch the show.
Yeah, it had a real problem with the special effects not matching.
And there was a comment by Apollo once talking about, what was it? You know, they of course have some unit of measurement that's totally made up, but you know, said something about 50 some loads, you know, that so the Cylons were clearly firing some form of ordnance or something like that. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, again, fairly early show, and you know, early 70s, right? They didn't get galaxy and solar system correct, right?
Late 70s.
Yeah, late 70s, right?
Yeah.
But
I had just started my freshman year in high school when that show came out.
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
I'm going to make you all feel old.
I already feel old.
Yeah, that just happens when I wake up, or actually if I try to get out of a chair. So
yeah, a friend of mine turned 50, or I think maybe he turned 51, and I said to him, he was talking about how, you know, getting old and stuff, and I said, have you hurt yourself sleeping yet?
Yes, I'm 30. Yes, I have all the time, and since high school, because hypermobility. Yay!
only going to get worse.
I
only gonna get
know.
worse. I will, as a default, I sleep 6 hours and 40 minutes, plus or minus 10. And it's a combination of how my REM cycle works and getting to the point where some joint pain wakes me up because I'm at the shallow part of my REM cycle. So
Fair
it's
enough.
usually like my knee hurts and it's enough to wake me up.
Oh, wait, here we go. For the people in the chat daring me to make them feel old, I was in high school when the reboot of Battlestar Galactica came out.
Yep, that'll do it. That'll do it.
There you go.
Yeah, I remember the night it premiered too, and there was something that happened. And I can't remember if it was a local thing. I think it was a local thing, like a storm came through Des Moines and like power went down and or something, and they went off the air for a little bit. But when they came back on, they just sort of like picked up where they left off or something. I forget exactly what it was. There was something weird that came up with that. As it turns out, Battlestar Galactica, the original Battlestar Galactica, had a little bit of influence on both the Navy and the Air Force. If there was a movement at the time to call the F-16, what ended up being the F-16 Fighting Falcon, to call it the Viper.
And all the pilots do call it the Viper.
Yep, a lot of them call it the Viper.
Really?
They call themselves Viper drivers. Nobody calls it the Fighting Falcon. They may call it the Falcon, but they don't call it the Fighting Falcon. And they named it the Fighting Falcon because there was a French business jet called the Falcon, which it's like, why would?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. And the other one is nowadays, if you go aboard USS Carl Vinson, her call sign is Golden Eagle. But back in the day, her call sign was Battlestar. Yeah, right.
Viper
Says Viper Lawn Dart. And that's because it was the first fly-by-wire airplane, and they crashed a shit ton of them getting it right. Ooh. They crashed a lot of airplanes getting it right. But USS Carl Vinson at some point was called Battlestar, and I haven't been able to track down exactly when they stopped having their call sign be Battlestar and changed it over to Golden Eagle. But I, of course, prefer Battlestar.
I agree. I think it's
I agree.
But Pat and I are going to have a conversation about fighters and stuff like that at some point, and under what situations they make sense and stuff like that. So yeah. Stephen Ross. Yep, me too. I predate the first moon landing as well. I don't think Pat does.
I was born in 70.
Yep.
So we were still going.
Yeah. I did technically see Apollo 17, although I must admit I don't really remember it because that launch, I was young, and that launch was delayed to like the middle of the night. And my parents woke me up because I really wanted to see the launch. They woke me up and I went down and watched the launch, but I kind of watched the launch. But
half asleep. It counts.
Yeah, half asleep. But I remember Apollo Soyuz. I remember Skylab. All that stuff was ongoing.
Yeah. So one of the ways I look at the fighters there is they're not shooting 50 caliber guns, at least in Battlestar Galactica. Clearly their weaponry is powerful enough to do damage to a big ship. It's more like they're shooting 20 millimeters or something like that at the, it's enough to do some damage with enough effort, let's say.
Yeah, could be. I am clearly more skeptical about the idea of fighters than Pat is, and I think, but I think it's one of those things that we need to go back and sort of define our terms and sort of be a little bit more methodical about going through it and figure out, what you sort of need as preconditions to make it work. So,
Well, yeah, it's just about the sci-fi assumptions you want to have in that little universe as to whether or not they.
Yeah.
So, and clearly they wanted them. So,
Yeah, and it worked really well, and that show. I still have a fondness for that show, even though, boy, did it end up disappointing.
Which show?
The original Battlestar Galactica, and it's because of
Oh,
the time slot it was in. It was like Sundays at 7:00, 7
Sundays
o'clock
at
Central
7
Time.
o'clock. Yeah.
And so it was considered to be sort of the kiddies hour. And so, and this was back in the day. Actually, they did have gritty television, but it was like Starsky and Hutch,
yeah.
which was like the most incredibly violent show ever known to man. I mean, there was just like, it was just crime, commercial, crime. Sort of how it worked. But
Well, I mean, the shows back then, there was a bad guy with a couple other bad guys, and they were doing things, and
They were
they always
very
caught that
simplistic.
particular. What's that?
I said they were very simplistic. Here's the bad guy. You're not supposed to like them.
Yeah.
Nowadays, our bad guys are what we call complex. And you might actually think they're hot and like want to root for them.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of bad guys that aren't necessarily bad guys, depending on what your viewpoint in life is.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the Loki show, and I will admit that my hypothesis gets weaker the more movies they did. But I always thought that Loki wasn't bad so much as he was a chaotic character in a lawful good universe, right?
Yes.
The Asgardians are all lawful good.
And he's chaotic.
And he's willing to, he sort of had to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. I mean, you see that in the first movie, right? He basically goes and sets up an opportunity to slaughter all the bad guys. Thor gets spanked for going and fighting him. And Loki sort of says, the problem with Thor's thing is that he didn't actually solve the problem. I'll go solve the problem.
Yeah.
And so I always sort of what I really wanted them to do is to just have this idea that, yeah, Loki's the bad guy in the first movie because Loki understands that the only way to take out Thanos is to be standing next to him when he sticks the knife in. And so the way that you get to Thanos is you become his chief lieutenant.
Yeah.
And then he'll turn his back on you and you knife him. And that Loki was playing the long game on that. So
I don't think we're going to get that based on everything.
Well, you see little pieces here and there, right? You see Loki when the shield goes down, you see that Loki's actually quite distraught at the death of his mother. You see, that famous meme. I'm told that famous meme of, yes, very sad. How, meanwhile, or whatever it is, the one with Loki, that he was talking, that the specific context was the fall of Asgard and everybody being killed. But then later when he goes off, he is kind of upset about that, right?
Yeah.
He considered himself one of them.
Yeah. I mean, he was raised by them. Like, they loved him. Yeah, they treated him like the little shit he was on occasion,
but his mom didn't.
Yeah, his mom.
And the comment's been made that, like, he wears a cape that has that's yellow on the inside of his cape. It's like the exact same color yellow that his mother wore. I suspect that's not an accident.
No, Marvel doesn't do anything by accident.
Yeah. So, and Tom Hiddleston is just such a fantastic actor.
Oh yeah, no, Tom Hiddleston is just like, he has such a blast in that role. You can tell, like, because he had originally actually
he auditioned for Thor.
He auditioned for Thor.
Mm.
So they're like, no, okay, not Thor. We know what'll be better for you. The casting director that picked him as Loki when they
Yeah.
saw him as like trying out for Thor. Top tier.
You know who I'd love to see in there's one actor I'd really love to see in a good guy role where he isn't a supporting cast member. He always either plays bad guys, or if he's playing a good guy, he's very much a supporting guy, and that's Mark Strong.
What's he
Don't know
in?
who he is.
Yes, you do. He played the bad guy in the Green Lantern movie.
Oh, that guy.
He's in Kingsman. He's one
Yep.
of the Okay.
Nope. I vaguely remember Kingsman. I know they came out with 2 or 3 other movies for it, but not familiar.
One sec. I'm pulling up IMDb to go through his entire filmography.
I'm pulling up a picture of him. Okay. I need to remember how to do this. It's been so long. Okay.
Zero Dark 30.
Nope.
Cruella?
Nope.
Okay, not that you would see him on it, but hear him. Have you watched the Dark Crystal series?
Nope.
Why?
I don't watch. Clearly, I'm not up on all the movies or TV shows, I guess.
John Carter?
I'm familiar with that story. I think I've seen the poster, but was he the guy that played John Carter?
No.
Oh,
No.
Okay. Then no idea.
Green Lantern?
He
Now,
played Sinestro in Green Lantern.
The superhero movies are not my thing. I've seen a few of them, but
Have you watched Kick-Ass? That guy, yeah.
he looks familiar.
He played the Jordanian chief of intelligence in that movie that Leonardo DiCaprio was the lead in, where DiCaprio played like a CIA guy in the Middle East.
Nope, no idea.
I have no idea on that one either.
And he played the bad guy in a movie, an underrated science fiction movie called Sunshine, about an expedition to the sun, that the sun was like dimming or something like that, and they had to detonate a bomb to like reboot it or something.
Oh wow,
and so
that's a hell of a bomb.
Yeah. The plot had some weaknesses, but the thing is that they had sent a ship and it had disappeared, and the problem is that it was so close to the sun that you couldn't see it because of the glare, and they find the ship. And so it's like, oh, okay, we thought the ship was destroyed, but they found the ship. And Mark Strong is the only survivor of the crew. And on a probability scale of 0 to 100, what do you think are the chances that he had gone insane and killed the rest of the crew?
Oh, probably pretty decent.
Yeah, because that's the kind of thing that you would expect. But the thing is, he was Merlin in Kingsman. That's the name of the character there. He's a fantastic actor.
Sure.
And he's done some great stuff. But like, people like him and Hiddleston always end up playing the bad guys. They may play very complicated bad guys, but they always end up playing the bad guys. I'd love to see him play the lead.
I will say this, Hiddleston at least, what was it, Kong Skull Island? He was not a bad guy in that. He was actually actively the good guy.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good point.
So that's one I could think of.
He does occasionally do that. He's listed as so those who remember back to the very, very beginning will remember that the very first time when I was on Axanar Confidential, or whatever Alec was calling it at the time, he and I spent like 2 hours geeking out over Warhammer 40K.
Yes,
And
I very distinctly remember this because he had to show off his toy, literally.
yes, and so I'm still a big Warhammer 40K person, and they've got like 75 books in that series now. So I mean, it's a property that's got some legs, and there every now and then you'll see people put together, what their dream cast would be if you were going to do the Horus Heresy, because you've got the Emperor and you've got the 20 Primarchs that you could have. 18 for those that are into the lore. If you're doing the Horus Heresy, you probably only have 18 because the 2 lost Primarchs are probably already gone by that point and we don't see them. So you've got the 18 Primarchs that are left, and then you've got the Emperor. And so they almost always, Henry Cavill is the guy they want to play the Emperor. Do you know who Henry Cavill is, Pat? He played Superman.
What's that?
Superman.
Okay, got it.
And The Witcher.
Yeah, I know he plays The Witcher.
And
he's a huge.
He is somebody that if he were to show up, I would take my geek hat off and hand it to him and let him wear the geek hat, because oh my God, is he a geek? He spent COVID. What?
He almost lost his role as Superman because he was in the middle of playing World of Warcraft and didn't pick up the phone.
Yeah, he almost didn't pick up the phone when they offered him. Yeah. He's as geeky as they come.
That's awesome.
He spent COVID painting Warhammer 40K miniatures. I've seen him on like British talk shows trying to explain the entire thing about miniatures wargaming to Graham Norton, and Graham Norton not getting it. Yeah. And he was being interviewed for something. I can't remember what it was. But he made the comment that there's something that he had been wanting to say to the rest of the cast of The Witcher, but it was so geeky they wouldn't get it. And that was that the chandelier that's over like the main room where they are in The Witcher, he said the chandelier looks like a Blackstone fortress. And so you got it, right? That's a 40K reference, Pat.
Okay.
And it's a 40K reference that's also like pretty deep in the lore. And it's the sort of thing. And he said, I'm finally with a group of people that I can say this to it and they'll get it. So I can say it. And he said it, and it's like, and and they should put a picture up, and he said, it looks like a Blackstone fortress. And I said, yeah, he's right. It does. So, I mean, the number of people in Hollywood that I'd like to meet, it may be more than one hand, but it's not really much more than one hand. I'd kind of like to meet Mark Hamill because he seems like he's a good guy. I'd like to meet Tom Hanks and thank him for Apollo 13 and From Earth to the Moon. I'd like to meet Ron Howard and thank him for Apollo 13. And I'd like to meet Henry Cavill. And there's probably one or two others. Maybe Vin Diesel, because Vin Diesel is like a super hardcore Dungeons and Dragons fan. Like super hardcore.
He is. I can confirm this. Him and it's not The Rock, it is Terry Crews, I think. Well, I know Joe Manganiello. I fuck up his name every time. Manganiello.
I think I know who you're talking about. Is he a D&D fan also?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He is a huge fucking D&D nerd. He has a literal room in his house just dedicated to tabletop gaming and D&D. Like, it's themed like a tavern.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous.
So I just started typing in Henry Cavill, and it says there's Henry Cavill, Graham Norton, Warhammer. It auto-filled. That's funny.
Yeah, and Will Wheaton is actually also on the list.
Oh, yeah. He had his own YouTube show on the whole thing, so, yeah.
Yeah. Will Wheaton is also
And he was
also on the list.
He was kind of fun playing himself on Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people in my tribe are really big fans of Big Bang Theory. I've just never been a fan of it. Because when push comes to shove, they're laughing at us, not with us.
Yeah. No, I entirely agree.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. It's like, don't get me wrong, it's nice to see it on television, but as you said, it feels like the vast majority of the time they're laughing at us, not with us.
Yeah, when somebody makes a reference to Dungeons and Dragons and they trigger the laugh track for it.
Yeah.
So
also, can we stop with laugh tracks in 2022, please?
Oh,
please.
It's actually interesting. If you take the laugh track out, I've often said that sound is more important than the visuals, even in movies. And it sounds counterintuitive, but I don't know about you, but when I was a kid and a scary movie was on, and I was getting too scared, I'd turn the soundtrack off. I'd mute it, and it's not really scary if you turn the sound off. It stops being scary. And one of my favorite examples for this is the episode "We'll Always Have Paris," which is the one where Picard is sort of reenacting the scene. He had this opportunity. He had this girlfriend played by Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. He had this opportunity, and he basically left her. He ditched her in a Paris cafe. What are you laughing at?
Just a comment by your brother.
Working theory is that Chris is too much like Sheldon, and he is.
We don't need to see that. No, Delon is a big Bang Theory. I've had this argument with him a lot. He's a big Bang Theory guy. And my uncle was too, but my uncle is not of the body. My uncle is not a member of the tribe, wasn't a member of the tribe. And so he had no problems laughing at members of the tribe. We'll Always Have Paris is the one where Picard is reenacting. The Enterprise is going off to the planet where this woman that he had this thing with when he was like an ensign, and he had chosen Starfleet over her and had basically just left her sitting in a cafe in Paris. Like didn't show up. He ditched her, and so he's going to this planet where she and her husband live, and he's a time researcher. And turns out that he's been conducting some experiments that have screwed up time. And they have to fix it, which involves Data going and doing something, and they go and they fix it in the end. And you spend the entire episode going, there's something wrong here. What is it? There's something wrong. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. I can't put my finger on it. There's something wrong. And I got to the point where I didn't realize what was wrong until I got to the very end and they went to the closing credits, at which point it like hit me over the head. And I actually went back to the beginning of the tape and rewatched it. Because what they had done was they had thrown away their normal sort of big, boisterous, major key soundtrack, and the entire episode was in a minor key. And it was like fingernails on a blackboard for the entire episode, but you didn't know why until they got to the at the end, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, now I got it. And so I've always thought, I mean, when you think about Psycho, the movie Psycho, what do you think about, right? There's one scene that you always think about, right?
The shower.
The shower scene. And what's the thing that stands out about the shower scene?
Well,
yeah.
So I think sound is actually more important.
Sound is more important, but there's also such thing as too much. And like, there are other ways that you can allude to, this is a funny moment than laugh track. It's just annoying at this point. It's overused. It's well past its due date to leave television, please.
I do think it's overused because they use it in situations. They should be using it in support, not in support of humor, not instead of.
Yeah.
And too frequently it's used instead of. So, yeah. Let's see. Let me go back and see if there's anything else that.
But yeah, no, if you take the laugh track away from Friends, almost all of the jokes, just make them all sound psychotic.
Yeah, well,
like really horrible people.
I watched so Seinfeld started slow. People don't remember that. People think of Seinfeld as being an instant hit. It wasn't. The first 2 seasons, it was like in the middle of the pack. It was only about the 3rd season that it really sort of took over. And the 3rd season is the point at which I stopped watching it, because I realized that if these people were, if I lived in the same apartment building as these people, I would take, I'd take the long way around to avoid them. I wouldn't get on the elevator with these people.
Well, and they kind of acknowledged that they ended up in jail in the season, in the series finale, right? They were bad people. Everybody showed up from the whole series.
But I don't want to watch bad people. It's just, and it's not that
I get that. I didn't watch it first run. I've only watched episodes here and there, and sometimes it's good. But no, it was always good. The character, the thing about where the main character is or the protagonist of a TV show is actually the bad guys in some way, shape, or form. I'm kind of over that. It's just an overused thing. So, but that's just my personal opinion. Frankly, actually, I just finished watching Ted Lasso, and that was it's a funny show. It's a fairly positive show, and I really enjoyed that.
I haven't seen it, and at some point I need to. So we still have the plan to do Babylon 5. I will admit that I haven't made any progress on it. I just haven't. When my brother Sean came out, so Sean was a trooper. Sean came out, and the day after I got out of the hospital, Sean shows up. He spent 2 weeks here, sleeping on my couch. He ordered an Xbox and played Xbox stuff. Because he said it was time for him to get a new Xbox anyway, because he has one of the older models and eventually he's going to get the red ring of death. And so he wanted to have a spare one anyway. So he brought his memory card, and it's like, dude, why didn't you order it before you left Des Moines? And he said, yeah, I should have. I totally forgot. So in any event, he bought a new Xbox, spent 2 weeks crashing on my couch and stuff like that. And in retrospect, it would have been a great opportunity for me to watch Babylon 5, except I couldn't because he was crashing on my couch.
Yeah.
In front of my television. So he was using my TV.
Huh. If only he had an iPad.
Yeah, I probably could have watched it on the iPad. The thing is, I generally don't watch shows on the iPad. I could have watched it on my phone. If I'm going to watch something on YouTube or something like that, I'm more likely to watch it on the phone so that I can be doing something else on the iPad. I don't usually use the iPad to watch things like that. I probably should. I really probably should. The closest example to that is I think I watched the first couple of episodes of For All Mankind on my iPad while I was on the elliptical machine, because I could just put it up there and watch it.
Gotcha.
So.
All right.
All right.
We at about that time.
Signing off.
We are at about that time. So, we didn't really spend a whole lot of time talking about naval stuff, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get back to that.
We were coming back. It was a first time back. Getting back in the swing of things.
Time to get caught up in a bunch of stuff. I think that it's unclear to me whether I'm available next week. I'll have to decide fairly early on. If I'm feeling up for it, I'm actually going to be in DC. A friend of mine who is in the Navy has orders to go to Japan, and a friend of Pat's also. And so I'm going to go, spend some time hanging out with him if I'm up for it. I need to find out exactly when he's leaving town, though, because to be honest, right now, if I had to make the call right now, I would say I'm not going, because I'm not at the point where I think I can spend 8 hours in a car followed by like the next day 8 hours gaming, and then 8 hours in a car to come back. I'm not an all up round yet.
I'll be next weekend. I'll be at MetaCon in Minneapolis. So I guess it's an anime type convention, but they're gonna have a game room and it's local. So I'm gonna go, and Chandler and I will be demoing Star Force Commander and everything like that, and so should be a good time. So if anyone happens to be there, look for I believe Chandler should be in the maroon Starfleet uniform. So we'll be there gaming.
Okay, so it looks like we're probably not doing a show next week, but I expect to do one after that, the week after that. I don't have anything planned for that. And so on my list of things to do, just to sort of set the stage, I want to do something on fighters and torpedo boats to sort of set the stage, to then bring Pat on so we can argue about it some more. I have started... I talked about Norman Friedman's The Fighting the Great War at Sea. And I realized that I needed to read his book, Network Centric Warfare, because he spends a lot of time talking about some of the same issues. He talks about the radio era.
Did it kill the
radio era, the radar era, and the computer era is how he breaks it down. So he does World War I, World War II, and sort of post-World War II, data links sort of stuff. And it's supposedly a very good book, and he's a very, very sharp guy and a very good historian. And so I'm looking forward to reading that book. And I've also got Julian Corbett's Some Principles of Maritime Strategy as one of the things. Oh, and I almost forgot. In fact, I don't think I told you this, Pat. Trent Hone contacted me. Did I tell you this?
Who?
Trent Hone. So in one of the episodes where you weren't here, because you were off gallivanting around in your sky chariot or something, I did a show on Trent Hone and the work he did on the development of U.S. naval tactics in the interwar period. Okay. And so he did, basically he's later did a book, but he did an article on interwar period naval tactics, and then he did another article sort of extending it. It has a lot about the importance of doctrine and how they use doctrine and how they developed it and made it the centerpiece. And it's also the one where he talks about how our battle line was so slow that we intentionally came up with the idea that we were going to fool people into thinking that we were going to do a parallel. But in reality, our goal was to do this and try to cut off the end of the line and kill them before the vanguard could come around. If nothing else, if you do that, those who saw the show will remember that if nothing else, if you do that, it means that the other guys have their ships out of position because they've set up for a particular type of battle that they want to do. And we fooled them into thinking that we wanted that battle too, and then we do something else. And so, wherever they had an idea about where they wanted to put their fastest, most powerful ships, and we took them out of the battle. And so Trent's a great guy, and somebody on the show had said, "Hey, I actually grew up with Trent, and I still see his mom, and I should talk. I'll let him know about this." And I also sent him a note saying, "Hey, Trent, haven't talked to you in a while," because I actually was one of the commenters on that article back when he wrote it, back when I was still at CNA. I worked with his dad at CNA and at the Naval War College. And so I'm Facebook friends with him. I sent a thing off and said, "Hey, we should do that." Here's the link to the show. You might be interested in this. The part you want starts at 9 minutes and 30 seconds. He sent me back a note and said, "Hey, yeah, that's great. And that thing where you said that I and John Parshall should come on the show. Yeah, let's do that."
Nice.
That would be very cool.
That would be cool. Now,
what are the odds of you getting John?
Well, so it's unclear because John. So Pat and I, when I come to Minneapolis, it is frequently this case that I'll spend the night at Chris Carlson's house, and Chris and Pat and John and I will get together and go out for Mongolian barbecue, and sometimes we end up back at Chris's, drinking weird Minnesota sodas that Chris always provides us.
I need. What
Sorry,
do you
what?
mean by weird Minnesota sodas now?
They're like local soda breweries, and they have some interesting flavors. They're good, but they're like things that these are things that you don't like walk into the local grocery store to get.
Bacon?
I don't remember bacon, but it wouldn't surprise me. So
Bacon makes nearly everything better, though.
So
it does
John,
not. I can confirm it does not make soda taste better. I've had bacon soda.
No, I'm with you on that.
John is an absolute fabulous person. He's a great person to talk to. He's a wonderful human being. He's a very knowledgeable historian. Indeed, he really only has two flaws as a human being, and they're big ones. And those two flaws are he's not a gamer and he's not a science fiction guy. So we'll have to sort of structure this. It isn't going to be just a let's have him on. It's going to be a little bit more. We'll have to structure and think about how to do stuff, because I don't want to just have John on and then talk about a bunch of stuff that John doesn't care about. So we'll have to sort of talk, we'll have to think through how we're going to do it.
I think John's book is the only 1,000+ page book I've read twice.
I don't think it's that long.
Well, I'm not sure exactly,
but yeah,
maybe it's 700 pages or 600, whatever. That and Red Storm Rising, I guess. Those are the two thickest books I have read multiple times.
Yeah, Shattered Sword is a fantastic book.
So
what's that?
I said, look, I hyper focus on things. So there are several books I've read multiple times over.
Oh, sure.
And John's working on a book on 1942 as the pivotal year in the war, because 1942 is Midway and Stalingrad and a bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so
studying, the war between the Germans and the Russians.
And Guadalcanal. And Guadalcanal is all in there. So, I mean, 1942 is arguably the year where the Allies won the war. It just took a while to sort of bring it through to fruition. Yeah. And so his head's in 1942 right now. So, we'd have to make that happen. And John I haven't had the conversation with John yet. I need to, but I'd love to have John and Trent on. We could. My original thought was, hey, this is something we could do sometime when I'm in Minneapolis. But on the flip side, I'm not sure the right answer is to have four of us clustered around Chris's camera in the basement of his house. We might
probably not.
Actually, I mean, I have a laptop, so there could be two separate logins, right? Just because we're in the same spot doesn't mean we all have to be on one computer.
That's true. I could easily see us all sitting down at that big table with our own laptops, like literally across the table from each other talking. Although we'd have feedback issues if we tried doing that. So in any event, there's a little bit of logistics. There's a little bit of planning that has to happen with that. But Trent, in theory, is interested in being on. I'm still going through and wanting to pull out things about. Like I always say, I think the thing that we do that the other shows don't do out there is we've got a much better understanding of how navies work, and we're trying to basically pass on our knowledge about how navies work so that our audience can then go in and sort of be able to think through these problems themselves. Right. And you see, there's lots of other things that you see on YouTube. I won't mention any space docs by name, but Did you catch that, Pat? Did you catch that?
I did.
Okay. They do for some of the stuff that I don't want to pick on anybody in particular, but there's a lot of people out there that they're good about telling you that, this particular Federation starship was made in such and such a time, and it's got X number of warp cores and, phasers, et cetera, et cetera. They're good about that part, but they don't understand how navies work. And sometimes they go to the extra step where they try to explain try to put it in Navy terms, but they don't know how to think through the problem from first principles. All they can do is sort of it says that it's a cruiser, so it must be like a cruiser, without really even understanding what it means to be like a cruiser, right? What does a cruiser do? How do cruisers change over time, et cetera? So I will put our ability to have that conversation with people and to pass that information on up there with anybody else on the internet. So everybody go tell your friends that, so that they come and watch us. Are we done?
Yeah, I think we're done. It is 11:15, which is 15 minutes past when we should actually end.
So, yep. With that, I'm taking one real quick look. Let's see if there's anything that I immediately need to jump out at. And the other thing I'll say is that at some point, TJ is going to come back and talk to us about Starfleet admirals. I know he's still working on it.
The rot at the top.
I'm sorry, what?
The rot at the top.
The rot at the top. And so, TJ, this is not me trying to put pressure on you. This is me just advertising for you, so that at some point he's going to talk about that. And I'm looking forward to seeing it, because TJ does good work. Okay, so I think with that, I think it's time to declare victory. And yep. I'm going to go do some hardcore horizontal, because I don't know exactly what my heart rate is at, but it's probably at about 105 or 110 beats per minute. I'm at 94. Despite the fact that I'm sitting and not doing anything, I'm at 94, but that's actually pretty good. If this were 3 weeks ago, I'd be at like 120 for expending this much energy sitting in a chair talking to my computer. So I'm going to go do some horizontal. Thank you very much, as always. Right. It was fantastic to be back.
Yes, it was good to see you guys.
Didn't even come close to dying even once this week. That was great.
It's an improvement.
It is an improvement.
Mainly because the normal times you try to die each week should be 0.
That sounds like a good plan. Yeah, TJ, go ahead, give me a call. And I will talk with you all later. So goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.